It is the 17th century in Arta, Greece. A young woman walks towards the Arachthos river bank to bring a homemade meal to her husband, the head engineer, who overlooks the construction of a stone bridge that will connect both sides of the river. As soon as he arrives, the workers point down to an opening at the foundations. "Your husband's wedding ring fell in the gap," they yelled, and she, as graceful and kind as he was, volunteered to go fetch it in the rubble. But as he aimlessly searches the ground, she hears the workers placing bricks on top of each other, elevating the height of the pillars that surrounded her. She yells and screams for them to stop, but they completely ignore her. And only when a tiny gap is left at the top for her to escape, she sees her husband looking down on her, illuminated by the sunlight. Without saying a single word, the head engineer lifts a heavy rock and places it on top of the gap, trapping his wife within the foundations. This is a story that has survived for more than 5 centuries. A folk song from the town of Arta in northwestern Greece reveals an obscure side of Greek traditions. I am your hostess Maria Elena, and in today's Helinika Podcast episode, we explore the concept of human pillars in Greek and international folklore. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to stay connected. When people hear about Greece, they imagine the same scenery: deep blue waters, a clear sky, and a golden Mediterranean landscape with white roofless houses built in close proximity to each other, right? Well, today we travel to a different Greek landscape, one located on the Epirus region, vast, green, and mountainous. Imagine houses made of stone and lush forests. From the mountains of Pinthus, a river starts flowing down and through the town of Arta. This is no other than River Arachthos. One of the main landmarks of the area is a stone bridge that dates back to the 17th century, although older structures have existed before that. The bridge stands on 4 stone arches that support its foundation. One of them is much higher than the rest, giving it a distinct look, which many may even describe as haunting. Well, there is in fact a legend about this arch, that it is in fact haunted by a human spirit that was trapped inside its walls when the bridge was constructed. According to a legend, the bridge's construction was plagued by multiple failures. 45 builders and 60 apprentices worked all day to build the bridge. Every morning, when they returned, the bridge had collapsed.
Woe to our efforts, a pity for our labors, to build it all day and at night for it to collapse. A little bird flew by and sat across the river. He did not sing like a bird, not like a swallow, but sang and spoke in a human voice. If you do not sacrifice a human, the bridge will not hold strong, and do not haunt it with an orphan, a stranger, a passerby, but the master builder's beautiful wife, who comes by late in the afternoon and brings his supper. The master builder hears this and falls to die from grief. He gets up and sends the svelte one a message with a nightingale, to slowly get dressed, slowly change, slowly come by and bring the supper, come by late to cross the Bridge of Arta. But the bird misheard and went to her with a different message. Hurry, dress quickly, change quickly, and bring the supper early, go quickly and cross the Bridge of Arta. And there she appears at the end of the white roadway. The master builder sees her, his heart breaks. From afar she greets them, comes near and says to them, "Greetings, builders, and to you apprentices, but what's wrong with the master builder that he looks so depressed? His ring fell under the first arch, and who shall go down there now, and up again to find the ring?" "Master, do not be upset, for I will go myself and get it. I will go down there, and I will come out, I will find the ring." She had hardly descended, hardly went down into it, when she called, "Pull me up, dear, pull the chain. I've looked everywhere, but can't find anything." One layers with the trowel and another with the mortar, and the master builder himself goes and throws in a large stone. Alas for our fate, pity our legacy. We were 3 sisters, all 3 ill-fated. One of us worked on the Danube, the other on the Euphrates, and I, the youngest, on the Bridge of Arta. As the clove tree trembles, may the bridge tremble, and as leaves fall from trees, may the passers-by fall. Daughter, take that back and make it a different curse, because you have an only dear brother, lest he should pass by. And so she changes her words and utters a different curse. When the wild mountains tremble, then may the bridge tremble, and when the wild birds fall from the sky, then may passers-by fall, because I have a brother abroad, in case he happens to pass by.
This is the translation of a folk song called To Gefiritis Artas, the Bridge of Arta, that basically narrates the act of human sacrifice in Ottoman Greece, just a few centuries before her time. And as we saw on episode number 11, human sacrifice was not widely performed even in ancient times. Now, there is a clear question here. Does the folk song narrate a real event? Historians claim that there is no evidence to indicate that someone was indeed buried within the bridge's pillars, but it is not something that can be fully denied either. After all, in medieval Greece, it was not uncommon to sacrifice a rooster at the foundations of a new home to secure its stability. The animal spirit was meant to protect the home from the evil spirits or the elementals that were disturbed during the construction process. In some small villages on Greece's mountains, this tradition was actually practiced till a few decades ago, while you may have heard of stories of stillbirths being buried in people's gardens for this exact reason. What makes things more complicated is the fact that multiple similar stories and folk songs exist across the Balkan Peninsula. Just a few examples. In Romania, we have the monastery of Curtea de Arges. The legend tells of Master Manoli, who was forced to entomb his wife, Anna, within the walls of the monastery to prevent it from collapsing. In Serbia, there is the legend of Skadar fortress. The Serbian epic poem The Building of Skadar describes how a woman, the wife of one of 3 brothers, was sacrificed to ensure the fortress would stand. And in Bulgaria, we have the Bridge of Lovech. A folk tale speaks of a woman buried alive in the bridge's foundations to make it last. And now things get even more complicated, because in Wales and Scotland, there are different stories of so-called devil bridges that would require some form of human or animal sacrifice to be made. You may have also heard the nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Many believe that the fair lady reference here is no other than a woman from the noble Lee family of England, who was believed to have been buried alive as human sacrifice inside the pillars of the bridge. Now, let's go far, far away, in the East, and specifically in Japan, where the tradition of hitobashira existed. In this case, this tradition is not questioned as much as in the West. Hitobashira means human pillar, and it is the term that describes the exact act of burying someone alive within a structure to ensure its stability. This would especially occur in the foundations of bridges, castles, or dams to appease the gods or local spirits. One of Japan's most famous hitobashira legends comes from Matsue Castle, built in the early 1600s, so more or less at the same time period when the Bridge of Arta was rebuilt. According to local stories, the castle was unstable and suffered repeated collapses. To solve this, a young maiden was buried alive beneath the tower. Later, her restless spirit was said to haunt the area, causing misfortunes until a shrine was built to appease her soul. Similar stories are widespread all over Japan and in other nearby Asian countries. Now, going back to Greece, I would like to remind you of one of the first Helinika Podcast episodes, where I narrated the story of the first reported haunted house in the world, which was located in ancient Athens. I recommend going back to the first episode to watch it if you haven't already. If you remember what I'm talking about, you may connect the human pillars to the unnamed ghost that made philosopher Athenodorus follow him from room to room, only to point down at one spot at the interior garden. An excavation was made, and a skeleton was found at that exact spot. Was a man buried alive there as a hitobashira, or was this a murder cover-up? Just some food for thought. I would also like to share that in a tiny village in Pelion, where I would spend my childhood summers, an incident occurred in the mid-19th century that made it to the national newspapers. And I found out about this completely by accident while researching about this topic in the past. So a woman would repeatedly be warned by saints and the Virgin Mary herself in her sleep to read of the evil that was buried at the foundations of her house. With the help of her family and some neighbors, a small excavation was made on the ground floor. And human bones were found buried there. Another peculiar story that may or may not be connected to today's story. Now, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts and opinions. Are there such stories in your country of origin? Do you believe these practices were real or legendary? You can leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to show your support. And consider joining Helinika Society for some extra perks. The link is in the description. See you soon in the next episode.